4 people are indicted in the US, 1 Panamanian lawyer, 2 former employees of Mossack Fonseca, and 1 client who was born in Germany actually, and Mr. von der Goltz, which is a funny story because I had written a long story about him, a really long story, and we never published it because our editor said we don't really know if he really cheated with taxes, so we had to put it away. And 2 years later, he got arrested by the FBI, and we could run the story finally, which was a very big pleasure for me because I spent so much time in researching his story, and then we couldn't publish a word of it. So sometimes that happened.
Yeah, yeah. There was that indictment also showed a nice window into some of the behaviours of people who saw their names appear on ICIJ's website. We published a lot of metadata on the Panama Papers and all those connections. I'm sure some of you will have seen that, and people were shocked to see their names and sometimes panicked, and sometimes that was enough to prompt them to go and turn themselves into the local tax authorities around the world. So, that was something we were quite excited about. I don't know if you would say there's a sort of virtuous circle of one leak inspiring people to come with the next leak. That certainly feels like it's been the way at ICIJ. Has it been that way for you?
Yes, of course. I mean, Frederick and me were 2 young guys that stumbled into receiving this monster of a leak in the winter of 2015, and then we worked on that for a year, and we learned a lot because we worked with fantastic colleagues all over the world who nearly all were better than we were back then, but when your name's out in the open for something like that, people think they can trust you because maybe you handle it in a way that
they can,
because maybe they can, and that helped us a lot. So we get so many offers now that we have to decline. We have to tell people like 5 times a week to go away, to look for someone else, to maybe go to a local reporter, maybe go to someone in another country, or maybe to stay. The story about the Ibiza video also happened to us because the people had the trust because of the Panama Papers, because they said, we saw you handle that, and we saw that you're not afraid of what you've seen, and we said that you're not afraid if someone might sue you, the truth is, if we had known what happened after we received the first data from the Panama Papers, we would have been afraid probably. But it started with 7 documents in the beginning, and then kept coming, and it got to 11.5 million. And when we published in 2016, there was not a single reporter murdered in the years before for doing investigative reporting like we did on corruption issues. And a year later, Daphne was killed, and then Jan was killed. So if that had happened before, I don't know what we would have done. Maybe we wouldn't have attached our names to it. Maybe we would just have published it anonymously at Süddeutsche Zeitung. We thought about that when we found the friends of Vladimir Putin in the stories, and we spoke to our wives, and we thought, we can't guarantee what's going to happen, and I never had things like this in my life. So when when we had already confronted Mr. Putin and all the others in the weeks before we published. So when we knew, now they know, but we don't have the protection of the public. So they know that we know, but the public doesn't know. This was a really strange feeling, and we had this one night when I had ordered food with my wife, and the man who brought it, he rang the bell, and he said the door downstairs. We used to live in the 5th floor, and the doors downstairs would not open. I have to come down and open it for them. And I said, yeah, sure, fine. And I went down, and after the first stairs, I thought, maybe that's a trap. And I've never had this thought in my whole life before. And I went down, and I opened the door, and there was the guy with the food. So I went back up, and my wife stood at the door, and she said, you know what? The first time in my life, I thought, what if that's a trap? So our life have also changed for worse in some way. It's not that I'm afraid now, but if we think about going to Moscow, for example, we do think twice. And I would not go to Panama right now. And we are careful when we are planning trips to Malta. So when we worked on the Daphne project, we thought about what we do. And when Fredrik and me flew to Moscow last year to interview Edward Snowden, we thought about, should we really do this for some weeks after he had agreed? And then we went on the day the World Championship started in Moscow. So on the very day the football World Championship in Moscow started, we flew there, we flew in, we brought our own food and water, and we flew out the next day. It's completely ridiculous.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, probably, but not
only probably.
Certainly. Yeah.
So because we thought, what the Russians really don't want on the first day of the World Championship is that they have to arrest 2 German reporters, and everyone is writing about that. So we thought that's probably safe, but so that also has changed. But most things are really good that have changed.
Yeah. Are there any questions from the audience? Go ahead.
Heard from John Doe to make sure that he's still safe at the moment.
So I can't speak about that. We have an arrangement that I don't mention this, and this also opens the chance for us, for him to meet me at a certain point, of Fredrik. So we don't disclose if there was any contact after he sent us the manifesto, which was some weeks after we published. So we published, and then he or she had the feeling that he or she had something to say, and we got this manifesto, and when we got that, we had a conversation around that, and we were like, did you like it? and I mean, he or she, let's stay with he, because John Doe. So he said he was very, very happy, I mean, for him, it was a very strange situation. He had sent this massive amount of data in a black hole, because we just said, yeah, keep on going, and we didn't publish anything for more than a year. And he had insisted many times that we should publish now, and we said, look, we can do this, but it's going to be a mistake. We have to do it right. We have to wait. We have to be patient. You have to be patient. And we could have lied to him all the time and, just go out and play football instead of doing any work. He wouldn't have known. So he had to trust us. And then when the thing exploded finally, he didn't expect that. So he expected that we do, a number of good stories. But no one expected it to be this big. No one thought it would, lead to mass demonstrations in several countries at the same day, and resignations of prime ministers and all that stuff. So he was stunned and he was very happy and he couldn't believe all that. So that was three years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
That's the last thing I can tell you. But what we do have, we have a kind of a emergency warning system. So if something happens to him, then I should be noticed. I should get a notification by some mechanism that I can't explain now. It's a little strange, but so he wants me to know, if something happens, that I can report on that. Sure.
Any others?
My correct question is a bit more broad in a sense. I would like to get your opinion on something. Do you think that, especially in Europe, the threat to investigative journalism might not be like that you might be killed, but that the shifting towards more right-wing governments might bring legislation with it? Like what our Home Secretary kind of tried to introduce, that maybe the legislation to kind of raid an office of a newspaper might get easier for the government at some point, or the online, in Germany it's not that easy to raid an actual office, but I think it was about databases and online stuff. I think the threat might be higher in that part. Is it a real threat? What do you think? Do you experience it as a threat?
Well, we did have a reporter in Turkey it was her Panama reporting, wasn't it, that led to her being sued by people very close to government, and I think she ultimately escaped a jail sentence, but was left with a fine. I think that's the latest, isn't it? But that was a horrible situation, and her legal team, it was not. As I understand it, the content of her reporting was not in dispute, so the veracity of what she was saying, but she was still successfully sued. So definitely you've got different complexions of governments and attitudes where it's okay to the debate around where journalism can focus, the tolerance for free journalism is shrinking very rapidly in many countries. I don't know. Is your question specific about the UK? Because
it's actually more about what happened in Denmark. Of course, this is more about the öffentlich-rechtlich. I'm not sure what that is in English. Like the BBC
Public broadcasting company?
Yeah, that one. So, and what Austria...
Yeah, that one I wanted to speak about, because Austria is a very good example.
Because you kind of stopped that, sort of, with the publication of the video, but we never know what's going to happen when they re-elect him. And
Right.
actually that coalition.
So the right-wing populists, when they gained power in Austria, they started to interfere in the public broadcasting companies, and so when one of the we know is one of the most famous moderators or news anchors, when he did an interview with one of the right-wing populist ministers in Austria, and he asked hard questions, as it is his job. He got threats by the government, and they said, well, this is not gonna stay without fallout for you, and you better take some time off. They said maybe he should take a sabbatical and for a while, and I mean that is very dangerous if the government, is attacking a reporter or news anchorman only for asking the right questions, and it shows that they don't have to do anything illegal. They just say, look, we're not saying we will touch you. We're just saying maybe you stay away for a time because you clearly crossed the red line where there's no red line because he asked the important questions. And I think that's something that would immediately happen in Germany too. So as soon as the people who who hate the free press have the power, they will start to try to hold us back. They won't say, let's go down on press freedom, let's stop them from reporting. They will say they are free from reporting, but they're not allowed to lie, and they're not allowed to cross the red line when they are insulting us because they ask hard questions. So I think this is something that is immediately going to happen in every country where right or left-wing populists who don't respect the free press will be in government, and the European Union doesn't help. It's not that they would say, but we are in the European Union. I mean, I'm speaking here in London.
Yeah.
They're not part of us anymore. Sorry. But so that's one problem. The other one is that we have 2 murders in the European Union in the last years of journalists, and the people responsible for it are still not sentenced. So it's not clear if they will go free. But in Malta, nothing happens, and there's not a huge protest by the other parties in the European Parliament. That's a shame. It's really ridiculous, and this is a model because the powerful see that, as Matthew put it, you get away with it. And it's not clear yet, but until now, they do get away with it in Malta. And we did a lot of work in Malta on the ground and in other countries too, where the system reaches to, like Azerbaijan and Dubai. And we see that the highest level in Malta is not interested in solving the murder of Daphne, and that comes as a shock to me. And even when we speak with high-level politicians in Malta in the background, off the record, they won't say this is such a terrible thing. They say, look, she wasn't a good reporter. Look, she lied. We are sorry about what happened, but let's not treat her post-mortem as she would be holy. So they are just trying to escape the question, and that's a big problem. Yeah.
Any other questions?
I'm just wondering what the impact of the papers was in places like India and China, or was it much lesser?
Well, it's very big in Pakistan. In India, there was some big impact. I'm getting lost.
I don't know exactly. I mean, it's so much. It's hard to keep track. There were protests against Modi, and they have a list of 350 people who were in the Panama Papers, and they are trying to go after them, I think, but I'm not completely sure. And our colleagues won some awards, so they did really good reporting there. But I can't really tell you what's the current state there. And in China, they, in the beginning, they reported on that. So the official places and news reported on it as long as it seemed to be a story about the corrupt Westerners. And when we started publishing the story about China on day 3 or 4, they just cut it off. So you couldn't publish anything with Panama Papers anymore. And in Hong Kong, the man in charge of the Panama Papers reporting, he got fired the day after, 2 days after. But of course, completely unrelated, they say. So it's not, we didn't change the world there, of course. If you look to
Authoritarian.
regimes like Russia and China, nothing is going to happen there. They just say that's Western propaganda and good night. And it's the people, either they don't care or they believe their government, or they don't have the chance to protest because they know what's going to happen to them. In Russia, we have this, it's so funny, it's so absurd. We had the huge story of the best friend of Vladimir Putin being in the data there as the beneficial owner of 5 or 6 companies that were like $2 billion were routed through from Russian state banks outside and then, just disappearing. And so it was a fantastic story, the best story I think we had actually in the data. And nothing happened. And then in live television, Mr. Putin was asked about this story. And he said that his good friend, Dugin, who was a musician, so he's not even a businessman, he's a cellist. So why would he own all this money? And when we went to ask to Mr. Roldugin, our ICIJ colleague in Russia, he said, yeah, I think I remember that must have been before Perestroika, which, we speak about the 80s, the Perestroika. All the companies were founded later than 2010, I think. So he clearly had no clue what was going on in his own companies. And Mr. Putin said on live television that Mr. Roldugin had bought very expensive instruments like cellos for young and talented musicians in Russia. And no one has challenged that story in Russia. We're speaking about $2 billion. That's
a lot of cellos.
There must be huge barns somewhere in Russia with all those instruments. And that's so ridiculous. But he just gets away with it because it's Russia. So.
Yeah. And on China, that one proud moment for us a couple of months ago, someone did some research and found that Paradise Papers and ICIJ are among the list of blocked searches on whatever the search engine, the popular search engine is there. There was another question. Sorry. Yeah.
Which were your main learnings related to journalistic practice?
I think this was just a fantastic way for people to realise the benefits of collaboration. It was a project that fitted really well. You saw from the film how international it was, and that only scratched the surface of some of the stories that were there. But the depth of collaboration on some stories was just fantastic, and I think people came away really fired up with the possibility of what collaborations can do, and the film went into a bit too. This is all in the world of now of big data possibilities and shrinking newsroom resources. How do you bridge the gap? And by joining up, you're suddenly able to be bigger than the sum of the parts. And this is, of course, the scale on which many corporations and international financial flows work. They do cross borders. Journalism hasn't been so good at that, even in the era when there was more resources. And we're really excited about where this can go and what applications we can find for that. And but it's lovely to go through the process of having media partners come and work with ICIJ for the first time, and seeing them go from, certainly after Panama Papers, they were very pleased to be involved in a collaboration, but their mindset's still stuck in the why would I share anything with anyone else? They're pleased to hear what others have to say, but why would I share? And they're still blinkered. But the blinkers slowly fall away, and there's a sort of a magic moment when people realise that actually sharing, if the group is properly constructed so that there aren't absolute direct competitors, your arch rival isn't in the room as well, then the sharing really does work. I don't know if you endorse that or not.
I mean, yes, absolutely. We spoke a lot about this when we had received the first 100 gigabyte of data. We approached the ICIJ and we said maybe we can give something back now after we had participated in the offshore leaks story and Swiss leaks where someone else had received a leak and we could work on it without having it received ourselves. And when we spoke to our bosses and we said we'd like to share the scoop, I mean, their first reaction was, why the hell should we do that? And they were afraid, not all of them, but there was the argument that we might lose the grip on the story. It might not be, it might, just to run away. If the Guardian publishes the story, who still knows that we received it at Süddeutsche? So, and we had to explain and we had to lobby, and I think, we are all so happy we did it like we did it, because it turned out that if we hadn't shared, the attention cake, would have all been ours. But by sharing it, the cake got so much bigger that also when our share got relatively smaller, it was way bigger than the whole cake before. If you can understand that analogy, try the cake.
I love that. I've never eaten attention cake. It sounds great. Any other questions? Yeah.
Do you remember how you both felt just before the first Panama paper stories were published, and then what you did, in the first few days after it came out and the world, saw it for the first time?
Well, my story is going to be much less interesting. I'll just say quickly that I was very nervous beforehand. I worked a lot on the Iceland story, and the Icelandic Prime Minister's wife was posting about every question that had been put to her on her Facebook page before we were publishing. We felt this wasn't fair practice, but then I suppose, they probably felt using leaked documents wasn't fair practice. So we had to live with that. And but it was a very jittery time. And also just working on the minutiae of the stuff for many months, you lose perspective. And I remember colleagues who weren't working on it, they could see it was impossible in the real run-up. I was at The Guardian at the time, real run-up to publication, it was impossible to hide that something big was coming. And, while you couldn't discuss it, they were saying, are you sure it's going to be that big? And because you've been so close to it for months, I wasn't sure, at all. I knew it was going to be quite big, but anyway, what's your...
The same. We were really nervous because it's more than a year of work, and then finally we go public. It's like having a baby in you, and then finally it sees the light. And so we were praying the Pope wouldn't die on this day, because the Pope dies, the story's gone. And we hadn't finished our story, so we were still working on that, which is ridiculous from today's point of view. But it was the first big project that we did. and and we knew it that we had really good stories, but you never know what happens. You never know. And then when, like, I think 13 minutes before we published, Edward Snowden leaked our leak with a tweet. And first we were shocked. Why does he know? And then we thought, that's a good thing, because he gets some million followers, so at least they know about it. And then when it hit the news, I mean, we were only looking to Germany in the first beginning, and we had it on our main news show, and we couldn't believe it when it was the first news on the main news show on a Sunday evening, which is the most watched news show in Germany. And we were like, it's really happening, and we were just like applauding and having some champagne. And then we looked at Twitter, and it's like exploding all over the world, in all places. And the next days were really blurred for me. I know that we had to finish stories. Still, we had an 8-page special on day 1, an 8-page special on day 2, and that was not ready yet. And then a 4-page special, and so we went on. And at the same time, I could watch my mails, going down on the monitor. I would receive a mail, and I could see how the new mails got in, and it just moves down, and so like, oh, I got this mail from you, but it's gone somewhere down. And on the Monday, in a span of like 60 minutes, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Wall Street Journal tried to reach us, to speak with us. And we are just 2 guys from Germany. With bad English, as you can hear here. So we were like, this is crazy. And so after, I think at 9 in the morning, we assigned someone to answer media and other colleagues that we can't give interviews on that day, because we received more than 100 interview requests in like 2 hours. So we completely lost any ability to control this. So we just closed the doors and worked on our stories, and yeah, it was really crazy. And then we had to assign people for the fallout, because we couldn't finish our stories and work on the fallout at the same time. So we had to have someone to watch what's happening with Mr. Cameron, and we didn't report on that story in the beginning. Because we thought, well, it's been his father. I don't want to be judged by what my father did. So we ignored Mr. Cameron. The Guardian didn't, and they knew why, because then he had to admit that he himself had profited from the shares of his father. And then our newsroom was like, we have to report on that now. And we said, yes, okay, that's fine, but we can't do it because we have to write our stories. And the same thing happened all over again. They said there are mass demonstrations now in Malta, and there are mass demonstrations now in Argentina, and so we just we couldn't handle it anymore. So we had to assign more people and more people to it. We also had guards on our doors, which we never had, and the police was alarmed that that someone might be unhappy with our reporting. But so for us, nothing happened. Not even a threat. Not even an email saying we will find you, or something like that. That which we received a lot after Austria. So where people, they gave us names. We even got a real death threat to one guy in our team, saying on a tipped on a very old machine, what's it called, typewriter, saying we will find you, we're going to kill you. Nothing like that happened with Panama Papers to us. So for a year, we only had really good things until Daphne died, was killed. But the first weeks were we thought that the year before was the craziest time in our lives, but the first week after it were even more crazy, because it was just like, it was so much that I hadn't turned off the notifications on Twitter, sending email every time someone new follows you, or you get retweeted, or you get a like. So I had, in day 3, I had like 10,000 unread mails. And there was no chance going back. So I still don't know who wrote me, because you can't read 10,000 emails. So I just started, I said, I'm going to delete everything from going back and look who's writing now. And yeah, that was that. Now I'm again in control of my emails. So.
I've got a question. Your film shows the smashed up devices used to contact John Doe.
Yeah.
Why can't you just spill your coffee on the devices? What?
We had an expert there. So we had devices I had used, obviously for the first contact, and then devices to hold the contact. We had a conversation ongoing with the source for more than a year, so we had to do it somehow. And then we asked our tech experts, and they say, so if we really erase everything on the devices, is it safe enough? And he said, well, it's highly likely that it's all done, it's all gone, it all disappeared. And we said, well, highly likely is not good enough in this case. And he says, well, I can't assure you that no one can open it anymore. So we run all these programs that really deletes everything on your hard drive. And then he still said, I'm pretty sure that everything is gone now, but I still can't promise it. So we asked him, what do we have to do? And he said, you got to take a hammer.
Was that pleasing?
Well, in first I thought this is going to be fun. And I did it in my office, which was a mistake, because it's really messy. There are many small parts of it everywhere now. And I started going down on it. And it's not that easy. I thought it would be very easy to destroy it. And after, the fun is gone after 5 minutes. and no one else wanted to do it, so I kept doing it. And I still have it, because then I asked him, so what if I throw it away? What if someone finds just one piece with information in it? And he said, I can't promise you that. So it's still in a place in our paper.
So that was a trivial question. Has anyone got any? Okay, one. Okay, last question.
I didn't smash that. Sorry. In the film, once you talked about making a decision to collaborate, one of the speakers then says, we decided to get The Guardian involved. What was the rationale for the selection of The Guardian as opposed to any other newspaper in the UK?
So I can't really answer, because it's an ICIJ decision. So the way it works is when you're the one who's handing over data to the ICIJ, the idea is you want them to share with the best possible team of journalists. And they will suggest to you who to involve. And as you're still the owner, you can say that you don't feel comfortable if you have a really good reasoning and a really good argument. But we didn't really want to get involved with that, because we didn't want to be the referees. But said that, we had worked with The Guardian before, and they did fantastic work. And they have some members. You remember now? Have you been before? I don't know. So it just seemed a natural decision to go with The Guardian. And I think they did one of the best jobs worldwide with the Panama Papers. So we didn't regret it a single day. And with the rest of the world, we included more than 400 people on that. So we couldn't do that ourselves, of course. So we were really happy the ICHA was doing this. They would look out for someone. So if we need someone in Iceland, obviously we needed someone in Iceland, they would go to our colleagues in Sweden and Norway and would ask them, do you know someone who's really capable in Iceland? And they would say, yeah, let's go to Johannes. And then they would contact him after, several people said he's really good, and then would ask him if he's able to work collaboratively, if he's able to encrypt his emails, and then explain a little what it's about. And if he says yes, they would have a long talk, a long conversation with him, and then finally decide to go with him. But we wouldn't be involved in all this. They would just say, look, we've got this guy in Iceland, fine with you? And we said, we trust you, and that's it. So at Süddeutscher level.
ICIJs, we've got a delicate balance. We like to have people that we have experience working together and that work well with each other, partners, but also we don't want it to become a club of people who just have a sort of groupthink mentality as well. So we try and bring partners into projects that are maybe have some expertise in thinking about things in a particular way. It's going to be outside of the competency of a group that's worked together before. And so we do flex things in different ways, but there are pros and cons to every mix that you go for. The most important thing is to get people who trust each other, and so that involves not having direct competitors in the mix. So if you're going to have The Guardian, it's not so smart to have The Times. It's all right to have BBC Panorama because a broadcaster and a print will work well together. But that's the broad rule of thumb. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.